this was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think there was a story on one of the TV stations about this thing called the Divergent Diamond Interchange, I think is how it's referred to here. And because of that, we had a couple phone calls, callers who had either opinions on the Divergent Diamond Interchanges or they had questions about the Divergent Diamond Interchanges. And anyway, so it's really interesting conversation. So I thought, you know what, let's reach out to the engineers on the project and hear more about it, since it is kind of I think this would be the first ever Divergent Diamond Interchange in Montana. It's part of the big, Billings bypass out near Lockwood. But I know our listeners elsewhere across the state will even be interested in this, because it's kind of like the changes like back in the day when the roundabouts first started. If you saw them in Billings or if you saw them in Missoula, well, heck, now they got them all the way up in northeast Montana on Highway 2. So I think whenever it comes to these infrastructure conversations, folks are always very interested in all this. Well, we've got the folks from DOWL, from the engineering firm DOWL, here with us. Lisa Olmsted is the public involvement manager, and Douglas Enderson is a transportation engineer. Douglas, Lisa, great to see both of you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to have you. Yeah. Well, Lisa, maybe let's start with you. I guess how do you describe, put it in layman's terms, what a divergent diamond interchange is?
Yeah, so let's just take a step back. The Johnson Lane interchange is where the Diverging Diamond interchange will be. This is one segment of the entire Billings bypass project, which will connect Lockwood to the Heights. So, just giving people some context.
That's a good point. So, and if you're in, say Bozeman or Livingston right now, and you've driven that road, so that's a very key interchange, because you've got folks that, if you're going to drive to Denver, you're going to head south to Sheridan or Casper, Wyoming, you're going to head south from that point on I-90, right? And then, but if you're heading to, don't miss the turn, by the way, but if you're heading to Glendive and Miles City, you're going to keep heading east on I-94. So that's a key and then Billings is right there. But also, you think all these folks, are friends from the High Line, central Montana, northeastern Montana, that also need to get down to Denver or go sell cows down in Wyoming or something like that. Well, they want to get around Billings. They don't want to have to drive through all that Billings traffic. They want to get around Billings, get right on the interstate. So that's what this whole project is working to do, right? Right.
Well, and it was also triggered by the tornado at the Metro Park, when all of a sudden we lost that key connection. It became this eye-opening moment for the community, for the state, for MDT, of like, oh my gosh, we've got a major issue in terms of safety, connectivity. What if somebody needs an ambulance in the Heights and they can't get through past the Metro? So it'll be an alternate access point to the Heights.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite lines from a military friend is, if you got one, you got none, because that thing's going to break. Mm-hmm. There might be a blockage or a failure, so you got to have a backup.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So think about critical access types of issues too.
And of course, DOWL, very prominent, a very well-regarded engineering firm, of course, on this project as well. So should we maybe go to Douglas then? Maybe Douglas, as the transportation engineer, give us kind of your take on how would you, because I know we got a lot of engineers, especially in Bozeman, listening too. How, as an engineer, do you describe this Divergent Diamond interchange?
It's one of the safest interchange configurations that we could use on this interchange, just because of the imbalance of traffic in this area. As we know, there's a lot of residential neighborhoods south of the interchange there in Lockwood, and a lot of those folks commute into Billings. And so both in the morning and the afternoon, there's a lot of traffic trying to come through the interchange and get on the interstate. Well, that interchange, with the traffic being flopped on both sides, for those that aren't familiar with them, the traffic basically gets swapped to the opposite sides of the road. It creates free-flowing movements onto and off of the interstate, such that there isn't as much crossing traffic.
Yeah, so you imagine when you come off the interstate and you need to turn left, you have to cross across oncoming traffic. This eliminates those potential crash points. So it becomes a lot safer. And the other nice thing is that at Johnson Lane Interchange, there's a high percentage of large traffic. We've got the Brett's RV, there's the truck stops out there too. So this is a nice intersection configuration for that kind of traffic. I've made a few stops
out to the Brett's RV
That's
out
there.
That's
what it sounded like.
I'm loving it out there, yeah.
Gotta get one of those generators,
all sorts of, it's key, yeah. Well, hey, if the campgrounds are shut down, well, I got my generator, we'll be all right. I know I had a couple phone calls because I had seen some news, I think maybe a year or two, when they were first discussing the Divergent Diamond Interchange, so I was kind of vaguely familiar. I know some folks, when they see the design, they see the plans, it kind of throws them for a loop, I guess. You know, they're like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah.
It might seem a little confusing when you first see it, but then when I had it described to me by one of our listeners, like, oh, I think I drove over one of those in, Idaho Falls once.
Yeah,
So.
and we've got some videos on the Billings Bypass website too, and I can send those links to you, and you can share them on Facebook or that kind of thing, because the videos do a much better job of actually being able to wrap your head around how the flow is going to be. And that's we've got some. They're kind of not fancy engineering rendering videos right now, and we're in the process of planning some more larger scale public communication information to pump out to the public about that too.
Yeah, and for me at least personally driving, and of course I was just in a small pickup at the time driving down to Salt Lake City for some military training, and so I just needed a cup of coffee, and it was kind of interesting because you pull off the freeway and you get into this lane and you end up on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road. But it seemed pretty easy for even somebody like me to kind of figure out just going through it, just coming off the interstate. But I know we had some good questions, though, from some of our listeners a couple weeks ago. Luckily, one of them is on the line right now. So let's go for a quick question or a comment. We got Tim in Billings on the phone line here. Tim, good to hear from you. Did you have a question or a comment for the engineers here from DOWL talking about the Diverging Diamond Interchange?
Morning, everybody. My concern on the Diverging Diamond is not that people can't figure out the new flow control, but my concern is that you're adding a bunch of additional stress load to the span of that bridge when all that traffic is parked on there, rather than having them sit on an earth-bermed off-ramp like at a normal intersection. And I know that engineers and you folks, you take all those things into account when you design these things, but I guarantee you that the people who built that bridge in Minneapolis thought that they had taken all that into account too before it collapsed. And with the seismic activity that we have in the state of Montana, isn't that a concern that you have all this additional weight on that span over the interstate instead of just having it on an earth berm off-ramp?
Great question. All right. Well, let's throw that to the engineers. Yeah, Douglas Enderson, transportation engineer. Yeah, your take on that. Yeah, good question there from Tim.
Yeah, great question. So there's a bit of a confusion here between the interchanges that we're discussing. So we're talking about the Johnson Lane interchange, which Johnson Lane actually goes underneath the interstate. The interstate goes over the top. So the interchange I believe you're talking about, Tim, is the interchange there at the Lockwood interchange, which is the one that dumps to downtown by the Metro there.
Okay, so this project, the traffic going across the interstate will actually go underneath it.
That's right.
Okay, so even if there is, if the traffic is stopped on the interchange itself,